Welcome back. On the line with us now is Stephen Lasseter, a blogger who writes from Palestine and also teaches in a school in Ramallah. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So you live in Ramallah and also blog from there. Could you tell us about the situation on the ground?
Yeah, Ramallah is not a place that's entirely different from any other, with the exception of it being under military occupation. I mean, it's a thriving community. It's very cosmopolitan. There's lots of bars and nice places to eat at night, and there's tons of cultural and social activities going on. It does not fit the image that most people have in their minds when they think of pictures from the Second Intifada.
Obama has recently stated that for a long-lasting peace, the expansion of settlements has to stop. Do the Palestinian people think this will happen?
They're very suspicious of anything that Western politicians have to say about peace. For a lot of Palestinians, the word peace has a negative connotation because it implies giving up more land. And Palestinians, for the past 60 years, have continually given up more land or have had more land taken from them as settlements have continued to expand and increase in number. So I think for most Arabs across the Middle East, and especially for Palestinians, there is a wait-and-see type of attitude. The speech in Cairo was appreciated, but at the same time, they're waiting to see a change of the facts on the ground.
Everyone has heard stories about how living in Palestine is difficult for most of its inhabitants due to the limited movement. Can you tell us just how bad the situation is?
Traveling in the West Bank and living in the West Bank generally really depends on where you are and what you're doing and what your citizenship is. As a high school teacher at the West Bank's best school, my risk of danger was relatively low. I knew where the trouble was, for example, at checkpoints or around settlements, and it's pretty easy to avoid dangerous situations. But at the same time, it's not always possible to do so, even when you're not looking for trouble. There was a story. I was going to a wedding of a friend in a neighboring village outside Ramallah, and in order to get there, you have to pass through an internal checkpoint in the West Bank. Coming back from this wedding, there was a long line of traffic on the other side of the checkpoint, and we told our teacher to simply drop us off. We'd walk through the checkpoint so that when he was coming home from Ramallah, he didn't have to wait in traffic. So we start doing a three-point turn. An Israeli soldier sees that we are turning around as we're approaching a checkpoint, and he assumed the worst. So he quickly strided up to the driver's side door where I was sitting and occasionally pointed his rifle through the windshield. That could have been pretty easily a tragic situation if he had been a little bit more trigger happy. So there's lots of situations like that, mostly avoidable, but oftentimes not. And this goes in addition to saying that mobility is incredibly stunted in the West Bank and difficult on a regular basis.
Amnesty International recently slammed the Israeli Defense Force over its use of children as human shields. This story made no headlines in the traditional media, but stirred up hysteria in cyberspace. Why do you think this bias was there?
I think there were greater news stories at the time when that report came out last week, I think it was. For example, Michael Jackson's death. News organizations are certainly going to lead with whatever they deem more newsworthy. And honestly, this isn't necessarily a story because even Israeli human rights organizations in the past have documented similar cases of the Israeli Defense Forces using human shields.
Are there still many protests happening in Ramallah against Israel's treatment of Gaza?
There were tons of protests during Operation Cast Lead, and in the few months after, honestly, there were not that many. Perhaps people took things into their own hands when they expressed themselves through Debka dancing or other cultural activities, but in terms of public political demonstrations, there haven't been an incredible amount. But I think some Palestinians in the West Bank, perhaps not publicly, but they are incredibly angry at Hamas to the point where a demonstration for Gaza might be conceived to be one in support of Hamas. But also, honestly, there's tons of political apathy in the West Bank because I think a lot of Palestinians have learned that if they speak out and they do become politically active, they will likely end up in an Israeli jail.
Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Before we end, it's time to unveil our blogger of the week. The best response we got to last week's question, which was, are newspapers a thing of the past, was by Fahad Asad, who wrote in to say that I'm afraid the newspaper might just be a thing of the past. Although they may not vanish altogether, as many still prefer to read their newspaper while sipping tea in the morning, their circulation in print form will definitely decline. I, for instance, now prefer to read my newspaper online, especially as it not only provides me with the latest news and interactive reporting, but I can also read a couple of newspapers, both local and international, with the ease of just clicking on the mouse and staring at the colorful LCD. Somehow, it appears very laborious now to flip through those big yellowish pages while still retaining focus on the actual article. Also, there's no danger of the newspaper being chewed up by the dog or getting wet due to rain. Thanks for sending that in. Of course, we love hearing from our viewers, which is why we're on the ever-popular social network Twitter with the hashtag WiredAndActive. Also, if you're on Facebook, you can join our group Wired and Active, and you can also check out all our previous episodes on the ever-popular website YouTube. The channel to go to is Dawn News Pakistan. Lastly, we here at Wired and Active will be blogging at dawn.com blog and forum. So if you have anything to say or discuss, feel free to join us in the debate or email us at wiredandactive@dawnnews.tv. Yep, that's right, we're taking over the internet. That brings us to the end of this episode of Wired and Active. I'm your host, Saida Akhtar, looking into the blog sphere. Till next time, have a great week.